Here's what Tom Bearden was saying about Maxwell's equations in 1998.
Do you want to
Well,
explain?
what we're calling
Explain about that?
Maxwell's equations aren't Maxwell's equations anyway.
Well, they are just the condensed versions of the original equations written in a new language of vector analysis.
Maxwell's equations are 20 quaternion and quaternion-like equations in 20 unknowns.
Well, that came later in his more mature works, but in his early papers, he just had the partial derivative equations and one for each coordinate, like one for x, one for y, and one for z. And he didn't compress them into one equation like we do today, but he just had partials for each direction in the space. And the vector notation, he didn't use vector notation like we do today. So it's not like a matrix of 20 linear equations with 20 unknowns. It's not like that.
So you can do all sorts of things in that kind of electrodynamics, his original electrodynamics, you can't do in what we teach today as Maxwell's equations.
Well, you can. You just gotta unpack these equations back into these coordinates, but it's a bit harder because the emphasis has shifted. Back then, this equation was considered one of the most fundamental, which today is not by any means forgotten or it's in a less regard, but it's very important. It's how B field comes from A field. It was included in the main list, which is not the case today.
Oliver Heaviside took a look at that. Maxwell's book was published in 1873. The definitive paper was during the American Civil War in 1864. And quite old. We're talking something 100 and something years old.
Right, exactly.
Heaviside took a look at that and he said, my goodness, you know, the electricians we have today, that's what they called an electrical engineer, and they really were about like a house electrician to wire your house up. They were not at all the collegiate electrodynamicists you expect to find today.
Well, quaternions were cumbersome and difficult, so new language had to be invented, and that was vector analysis, and well, it was hard too. So it wasn't until Steinmetz, I think, that electrical engineering started to be more accessible to engineers. But anyway, Maxwell didn't use quaternions to obtain these equations in the first place. He just used these simple partial derivatives for each dimension in space. So later his equations were repackaged, but some portions of electrodynamics just went into background, and maybe that could be the actual problem.